I'm about to bring on Nicole and Sheldon of Anderson and Christian Realty. Now, Jada, I'm going to bring them on. Hello, Nicole,
Mhm.
welcome. And
Hello,
hello, Sheldon,
everyone.
welcome to the Viewpoint Show.
Thanks for having us.
Jada.
Yeah. So these two here, if anybody was listening to 98.7 over the last several years, their name was ringing every other second. I thought something was wrong with my machine. So they were running ads like crazy. These two, they're realtors, real estate agents. They'll be able to break it down a little further, but very good people. Similarly to people that want to work with our community, that work with our community for our community, and they deal with you. Out. You remember last week? For those of you who tuned in, we talked about why we should support black businesses, or what do we need to do in order to support black businesses, and some of the customer service pieces and those other pieces we talked about. Some businesses needing this business right here, this tandem, they have it. And so I'm just glad that they're on board, and we're gonna give you your flowers. So I'm done. Brooke.
Yes. First off, I want to say hello to you guys. You guys look amazing. You guys came fresh to death, looking well crispy and out of white. Ear coat, everything ear done. I love it.
Thank
First, I
you.
just want to salute you guys for being, you know, an inspiration to a lot of us out here that hope and dream that we can get into businesses like this, because we weren't, as kids, we weren't taught a lot of things growing up. So knowing that people that look like me are able to succeed in businesses just like this makes me so happy to see my people helping me out here. So thank you guys so much. So my first question to you would be, what kind of business are you in and why did you get started?
Okay, so I'll take this one, Sheldon. Sheldon and I work together as realtors. And first, let me say thank you so much for having us. We feel honored to be with you guys. And the last segment was amazing. Shout outs to Andrea. I love that so much. And after I'm done here, I'm definitely jumping on and checking out that development firm. So as I was saying, sorry, I digress. Sheldon and I work as realtors, and we're also part of a real estate investment group where we buy properties and we hold them or flip them. We decide that along with the other members of the group. And last but not least, we also own a small restaurant. So you see, we're into many different things, and that's just because these days, if you've got super dreams, you've got to have multiple revenue streams, and so that's why we are not only realtors, but we're restaurant owners, and we're also trying to have our feet instead of just buying properties on behalf of our clients, we're trying to do the same for ourselves as well. You can take it from there, Sheldon.
No, I mean, you did a good job. You, as my mom would say, you hit the nail on the head. But congratulations to the last speaker, right? I think you guys, that was fantastic. I have their website up on my screen right now because, I think what people need to understand is when we talk about black businesses, sometimes people associate that with mediocre, right? And I think, just based on that video that you saw, right, when we talk about black businesses, I think people have to start associating that with development and excellence, right? And I think that's what you guys have kind of bringing to the table because, when you listen to Andrea and you're looking at some of the projects that they've been involved in, if you didn't know that it was a black businesses, you would probably think it was a Green Park or any other big development, right? So kudos to you guys for bringing her on. That was really awesome. So.
For sure. Wiggs, you're on mute. Wiggs.
Oh, gotcha. So again, well, thank you for
That's
those
what
big
we
ups. And
do.
again, we're here trying to, knowledge is power. That's what we say. So, just as some of us are fortunate to have access to the information, we have to do our part to help share information to the masses. So, just as how you're thanking us, we want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us to help empower the people. So my next question, you kind of touched on it already in relation to the topic. We posed it in a certain way, letting the people know why you should buy house and land instead of cars and jewelry. Now, based on Sheldon, what you last said, I kind of think you agree. But what do you think has been causing people to go in that direction, or more so nowadays than before, if that's the case? Or like what do you think is causing this hoopla in owning land and ownership in?
So definitely, I definitely think we should be, when we talk about land or real estate, that's definitely should be the focus. And I think in a lot of cases, sometimes we tend to put the cart before the horse, and I think Andrea said it right. So I think we got to spin it back around, and there's nothing wrong with nice things per se, but I think we have to be more patient and lay some groundwork and some foundation, right? And Jada Man said it in the past. I mean, I like the example that he gave when he talked about splitting the investment into two buckets, right? You have half, which is sort of long term, and then you have the other half where you kind of figure out what you want to do with it and you develop a plan. So I think in most cases, what we're not doing or talking about is the plan, right? And the plan is, what do you want to be, right? When you're 60 or you're 65, right? In most cases, if you don't develop that plan now, right, you can't do it when you're 65 because you don't have enough, as I would say, you don't have enough runway. So we always want to talk about, the plan, and the plan, there's no better plan than real estate and invest in real estate, right? Like if we can step in a time machine, right, and go back 5 years, I think everybody on this panel would say we would buy more real estate, right? Because if we had bought more real estate 5 years ago, probably we would be doing this podcast from the beach, right? Because we would be on such a sound footing from an investment standpoint. So we always have to remember that sort of the future is now. So oftentimes when we talk about, we always talk about like the hindsight. So for example, when we're talking about real estate, we'll always say, if I only knew. But the truth is, we know what we know now. So this conversation that we're having, in 5 years, we're going to be saying, if I only knew, I would have bought something in 2021. And when it comes to real estate, that's the conversation that we should be having. We know what happens to real estate, right? And in 5 years, it's going to be worth more. So we got to continue to talk about the investment side, and we got to make sure that we're putting our money into, an investment vehicle like real estate, as opposed to cars and clothes. That can come later on because we have that foundation, right? But right now, it's important that we talk about real estate and the investment vehicle.
All right. So when you talked about having a plan, right? We have a comment from Paisha on YouTube. She's asking, for first-time home buyers, like what are the best areas to look at to get value for that money that you're spending?
So before I'll let Nicole jump in also. It's not necessarily sort of an area, because we know what's happening with real estate prices, right? So, as in the past, you can easily say, I'll go to Kitchener, I'll go to, like an hour away or 30 minutes away. But now, based on what's happening with prices, I think people have to start also having a conversation with themselves to say, okay, what am I willing to do or to give up, right, in order to get to where I need to be?
Where I need to go.
And oftentimes, especially culturally, folks, they want to get there, but they're not willing to make the sacrifices that's required in order to get there. And I'll hand it off to Nicole, because I think Nicole is pretty passionate about this area, because we talk about this all the time. So,
yes. So what I hear all the time from folks, especially when I mention where I live, and that's Shelburne. Shout out to Shelburne. It's north. it's far, right? But here's the thing. When I speak to people, especially my own Caribbean people, and I say, hey, I live in Shelburne. I sold my house in Brampton. I was able to buy a bigger house in Shelburne and pay off some debt. And I was like, no, sir, that's too far, sir. This is the thing, though. I had no, it's true. I had to make a decision. I had to decide what was most important to me. And what was most important to me was being on solid footing and not living paycheck to paycheck and being scared, right? So driving an hour north of Brampton, for me, it was well worth it. The sacrifice of not being in the big city was well worth it, because I knew that what it meant now was I was delaying my gratification, right? So I was moving out so that I could be closer to mortgage free. Right. So, what I think a good strategy is for people to think of it this way: if you're buying the car, once you drive it off that lot, it starts depreciating in value right away. If you were to buy a house, let's say you're a first-time home buyer, average homes in Peel region right now, for example, in Toronto, it's topping $1 million, right? And there's very few people right now whose income is keeping pace with the rate of increase of properties. So I would say, unless you've got that solid financial footing, you've got to look further out. And it's the way it's working out is you're having to go further and further, because let's say 3 years ago, Shelburne was a good buy, but now Shelburne's really expensive, right? So a house that was 400,000 back in 2016 is over $1 million now, right? So now, Dundalk is next, going north. So you're having to look further and further. We just sold a house in Owen Sound that was about 460, right? So it's still possible if you're a first-time buyer and you're not, six figures or over to buy properties. You just have to make that sacrifice and look further out. Because imagine if you bought that $460,000 house, your down payment is $23,000. You can spend that on a car, right? Easily. And closing costs is about $7,000. So that's $30,000. And you can easily drop that on a car. But once you drive it off the lot, that's worth nothing. But we expect that same property to be worth about $600,000 in the next 2 to 5 years. So that's a $200,000 increase. And your mortgage is less than a 2-bedroom rental property in Brampton. So $2,000 a month, right? But it's a sacrifice that you'll have to make.
Yeah. So that question that Pi asked, and I think it went into the question I was
I
gonna
lost your
ask.
audio.
Are you hearing me?
Your audio's chipping out, Jada.
Okay, what about now?
Yeah, you're clearer now.
Okay, so what I was saying is that
I lost
question that
audio.
that question that Pi asked was pretty much the question I was gonna ask. But let me ask this, or pose this piece, because I know that along with some
Hold on,
people
Nicole,
may.
are you hearing us?
Is she okay?
Nicole, Sheldon, are you hearing us?
Oh yeah.
He's hearing us.
Okay, Nicole, I think it could be your headpiece. Can you take out your headpiece? It might be your headpiece.
All right, let me just drop this piece here.
Yeah, maybe ask Sheldon until Nicole
Yeah.
is the audio.
So Sheldon, I think another piece that people have to consider is the mortgage amount, right? And being able to, because we've seen this back in the day with the Indian. Let's go to Brampton, where a lot of the Indian community, we'd see like 10 people coming out of that house, right? I remember, and everyone's helping to pay the mortgage. I remember back in the day. Sorry, I'm gonna say, Mom, I'm gonna bring you up here. We're good now. We're good now, Mom, but I'm gonna bring you up. So I remember one time I said, Mom, let's buy a house, man. And she's like, me no want to live with nobody, right? So I'm just like, okay. And then that turned into, I never said that years later kind of thing. But and then we ended up making it. But what I was gonna say is, yes, it is the mentality, right? So we have to, a big part of getting into this game is being able to have some sacrifice. We're gonna have to, where the prices are, as he mentioned, the income is not inflating at the rate that the prices are inflating. So we're gonna have to get together. We're gonna have to group together, or we're gonna have to go way out. And if you're going out, I would say don't be afraid, because urban sprawl will follow. And urban sprawl is basically people just moving out of the city and filling up the other areas where they were, where it was country and that sort of stuff. So it's gonna ultimately get developed, but you're gonna have to just the sacrifice is key or changing the mindset and coming together.
I totally agree. So, I love stories, right? So when Nicole, for example, went to Shelburne, right? A lot of people, when you talk to them about Shelburne, even when Shelburne was affordable, the first question is way too far. I don't want to live in Shelburne because it's too far because of distance, right? And a good friend of mine said to me one time when, I was talking to him about, some clients saying, hey, for Shelburne is too far, but from an affordability standpoint at the time, it was a really good place to be, right? Just the opportunities, right? And so a friend of mine said to me, you know what, Sheldon, it's so strange that, and this is a story, so just entertain me for 30 seconds. So he said to me, Sheldon, it's so strange, our people, when they talk about distance and, not wanting to make the sacrifice. And, we're all a lot of us are from the Caribbean, right? So he said to me, our parents got on a plane, right? And sat on that plane for 4 hours, right? If you're from Jamaica, right? Sat on a plane for 4 hours, right? And they came to Canada not knowing probably anyone, right? Not knowing how it's going to work out, not knowing what's going to happen to them, right? They just basically said, you know what? I want a better life for my kids. I want a better life for myself. So they were willing to make that sacrifice. So they got on that plane. And while on that plane, a lot of them, it was their first time on that plane. So they don't even know the experience of flying on a plane. And here they are up in the sky, 4 hours. They land wherever they land, right? Could be Toronto. It could be, Calgary, could be anywhere, right? And they now have to figure it out. And so he said to me, in a lot of cases, these people, they're talking about it's far. And we're not saying it's not far, right? It's an hour from Brampton. But what he said to me was, in a lot of cases, these people, they're not even changing their phone number. They're not even changing their friends, right? Nothing is changing. The only thing that's changing is their address. And they're basically not willing to make that sacrifice. So let's go back to what you're saying, is that we have to sometimes, get out of our comfort zone and say, wait a minute, it's go back to that plan. What do I want, right? And an hour away. So if you had bought a house in Shelburne, 5 years ago or 6 or 7 years ago for 350 or 4, right? You would have doubled your money, in some case more than doubled your money, right? And at that point, you would have had the opportunity now to come back to Peel or come back to Toronto, right? Because now you have that thing called equity, right? So it goes back to what you're saying. We have to really, stop first and think about where we want to be and make a decision, right? If we want to be somewhere else, then we have to start moving in that direction. So we're not saying that you should move to Alaska, right? We're just saying that if you're trying to basically get into home ownership, right, and you're in Peel, where the average price is $1 million, and think about it this way: if you're trying to figure out how much income you need for a particular purchase price, just take that purchase price and divide it by 4.5. And that will tell you the type of income that you need in order to service, right, the mortgage that you're trying to afford. So again, whatever the purchase price is, when you see it, just literally take out the calculator and put in that purchase price and then divide it by 4.5. And that's the income that you're going to need to show to the bank in order to service that mortgage. And let me put a disclaimer. So when I say that's the income, we're just talking about if you had, no debt and so on and so forth, right? Because obviously if you have debt, if you have a car payment, then that income could be more because you need to show more income in order to smooth out the fall, if that makes sense, right? So we don't want to get
So
really
can I ask you a
technical.
question? So
Yes.
with that equation, right? And again, you don't have to get into the fine details, right?
Mhm.
But so say that number equals out to 200 grand, right?
Mhm.
Does that mean that's your income over that 20-year mortgage, or is it like, how does that fall
Yes.
into play?
Okay, so I'm going to put another disclaimer. So I'm not a mortgage broker at all. So I don't want the mortgage brokers to get upset with me. I'm a realtor, but I do play in that space. But So for example, so if the purchase price was $200,000 and you divide it by the 4.5, then essentially you would need around $45,000 to basically buy that home, right? So essentially, whenever you apply for anything, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a home. It doesn't matter if it's a credit card. It doesn't matter if it's a car, right? There is basically the banks will look at what they call ratios, right? So they're basically going to look at a thing called your GDS. And again, I'm not a mortgage broker, so I don't want mortgage brokers to be upset with me.
We're going to get into the mortgage show in a couple of weeks.
Exactly. And then there's also like a TDS. So really and truly, the banks are basically saying how much of your income, right now, exactly, will basically help to service this new thing that you're about to buy. And then they'll say how much of your income right now, with all the bills that you have, will go towards servicing this new thing that you're going to buy, right? So it's the same for. It doesn't matter if it's a credit card. It doesn't matter if it's a car loan. It doesn't matter if it's a mortgage. It's the same. It's the same reason.
Formula, yeah.
Exactly. And then so the GDS and the TDS basically has to be within a certain perimeter, within a certain number, right? And oftentimes you'll hear the word like, around 32 to 33% for the GDS. And you certainly don't want to pass 35 for the TDS, which is basically, so what they're doing is they're saying how much of your income, what is going to be used to pay for this mortgage,
for this house. Because
exactly.
Because you can't expect, okay, I'm going to use 85% of my
there you go,
because they're going to be like, that's not reasonable. How are you going to eat? How are you going to clothe yourself?
That's what I'm talking about. So see, I love the way you break it down, because people now understand kind of, it's just sort of basically, okay, how it all works. You're absolutely right. So what the bank is saying is that, hey, 50% of your income can't be used to service this mortgage, because we're going to have a problem if something comes up, right? Because again, what if your son gets sick, or your daughter gets sick, or your car break down, right? So what it is they want to make sure that not all of that income is going to be used to service that mortgage, right? And the same when we talk about the TDS, it's really, they're now putting in the bills. So what they're saying is that how much of your income plus all the bills that you have is going to go towards
part two,
exactly. So they don't want to see a scale where it's tipped a certain way, right? And so that's what you got to keep in mind. So when you divide that number, when you divide the purchase price by the 4.5, just take that into consideration. It's not including, the other bills that you may have.
That's amazing. A lot of people wouldn't think about that. I wouldn't have thought about that. I wouldn't have thought about that ever.
So I think
Jim, are you good now?
Nicole, is your audio back?
Yeah, sorry. Can I interject something
here?
Yeah,
thank you for your patience. We just wanted to make sure the audio was good.
Oh yeah, no problem. Okay, so in terms of another strategy that I think that that we can incorporate to reach our financial goals, and I think Jada had alluded to this earlier, and that's practicing group economics, right? So another thing that we have to remember is we are human beings and we make mistakes in this thing called life. So sometimes, for example, when you're ready to buy a house and you go to look at your credit report, it is massacred, right? But you might have great income. So what you could do is you can join forces with somebody else, whether it's family, whether it's, like-minded individuals, you join forces with them and you say, okay, I've got only my income to offer you. I don't have credit to offer you, so I can't be on this mortgage. The other person, hopefully, is in a position to be on the mortgage. And then you combine forces to reach your goal of home ownership. So that's one other strategy that I would say for first-time home buyers, and especially those people who are really wanting to jump in before these prices skyrocket any further. I would say instead of holding off too long, then find other creative ways to work together to reach your goal.
So quick question. You mentioned the term group and things like that. For myself, to put it in layman terms, is that what we call a cosigner?
Well, in this case, not necessarily what I was referring to.
Oh, okay.
When I say group economics, I mean just coming together as individuals, as a team, right? to purchase a home. So the person who you join forces with, for example, if their credit is shot, they may not be able to be a co-applicant on that mortgage, right? What they may be able to offer is helping with the down payment only, right?
Okay.
Right? So you may need a co-applicant. So you may need somebody else whose credit report is in good shape, right? But out of that group, what I'm saying is, try to find creative ways. For example, if you're not in a position by yourself to buy $1 million home or to buy a $600,000 home, just find like-minded individuals and create a team of people who, you plan with, what your exit strategies are, what each person will contribute to the group, and move forward.
All right. Now, question from the audience for either Sheldon or Nicole. Is it better to buy new development or a pre-owned home?
I'll let you take this one, Sheldon.
So when we say better, like I don't like the word better, because like situations are sort of individualized, right? So what's best for me might not be what's best for you. So for me, it's like pre-owned constructions. Obviously, they're some people love pre-owns, right? And there's nothing wrong with pre-owns, right? I mean, if you had bought a property 3 years ago, right, you would be laughing right now, right? Because you would have paid significantly less for that property 3 years ago, because the market looked different 3 years ago, right? So in some cases, pre-owned, there's nothing wrong with pre-owned. In fact, it could be a great strategy, right, to kind of enter the market now, and then you're not going to see, anything or for the next 3 or 5 years, right? And then depending on what types of pre-constructions also, is this a condo, right? Is this a freehold, right? I tend to love freeholds better than the construction space, the condo space, right? Because like a condo can take, it could be like 5-6 years, right, before a condo actually gets put up in the air, right? And then depending on what's going on at the time in the market, but typically there's nothing wrong with a pre-owned. Is it better than buying a resale? It all depends on what the goal is, right? Does that make sense? I know it sounds like I'm not answering the question, but it all depends.
It actually makes sense, and it kind of leads into the next question. I think Brooklyn had a question.
Yes, I do. Everything you guys are saying is so insightful, and like I said, I'm not a homeowner as of yet, but hopefully one day I will be. So you guys are giving me a lot to think about. One day I will be. So my question to you, beautiful people, is we also hear about flipping houses in our music and all over social media. Is this actually lucrative? And how can someone get started in this market? Like myself, for instance.
So I'm gonna start, but I want Nicole to also jump in, because sometimes we say the complete opposite, right? So hopefully we won't do that here. But it's possible. So flipping homes, when we talk about HDTV, right? Let's talk about HDTV first, right? When we watch HDTV, I got to tell you, it's a realtor's pain point, right? Because I think what oftentimes happens is when we see this play out on a TV screen, it's completely different in real life, right? Even the buying and the selling process, right? You got to remember, it's TV, so a lot of it is sensationalized, right, in regards to what's happening, right? So flipping, yes, depending on the purchase price, right, depending on what it's going to take to bring this property to market, there can be money in there, but you really have to, going back to what Andrea says, you really have to do some homework, right? You can't just buy anything and everything and think you're going to somehow flip it and make $200,000, $300,000, right? Because what you have to remember too is you could buy a property and end up putting more than the property is worth when you sell it. So you got to do a lot of math in regards to trying to figure out, hey, how much is this property worth? As in, how much would I need to pay for this property, and how much work would I have to put into this property to then get it back on the market in order to kind of make it worth my while, right? So I personally hate HDTV because I think it sometimes sends the wrong message in regards to flipping. What I will also say before I hand it off to Nicole is, I think it's important also in that sometimes holding also is where the money is, right? So you can sell and you can make some money, and it's good money. But oftentimes when I talk to a lot of people, 5 years from now, they'll look back at what that same house went for, and they'll say to themselves, "Oh my gosh, if I only had, hold out," right? I mean, I had a place, back in the days in East Liberty, right? And I always tell even Nicole the story, right? Like I probably bought this place for 350, and then ended up selling this place in East Liberty, which is like heaven on earth, East Liberty. And now condos in that area they're probably in the 8, right? So can you imagine if I had just hang on to that property, I would have doubled my money. I could have done if I needed money, I could have done a refi to get some money out, right? But I would have still owned the asset, right? So sometimes also one strategy is to hang on for the long haul. And once you own, you can always go in if you need to go in for a refi in order to do another opportunity and so on and so forth. But again, I want to hear Nicole's opinion on this too, because again, sometimes our reviews is completely polar opposite.
Yeah,
So
let me just touch on that a little bit here.
mm.
Yeah, I'm looking like a call center agent now. Tech issues all day, like
Or a
so,
pilot. Or a
or
pilot.
yeah, no, I feel the investment real estate game, it is a long-term game. You have to, and I hear people say that about, stocks and that sort of thing, and now crypto, right? So it's a long-term game. Something that I feel, so a piece of advice that I give people is, so a lot of people want to get in for the money, but as you said, Sheldon, and I think Nikki, you said it, Nicole, you said it as well, was like the prices are just they're not standing still, right? Like there's only so much land, so the prices, and there's more people coming on Earth every second, right?
Yes.
So the price is just gonna go up. The demand for it is going up. The cost is going up. So if you don't own a home, some people are like, "Yo, I want to get a thing to flip," and I'm like, "Nah, nah, 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 nah." I did it backwards, right? Like, so I got investment stuff, properties first, and I was like, yo, I should have just bought somewhere to live first, right? Because as you said, Sheldon, you can move with that, right? It appreciates. You have some equity, which is the money that it's appreciated to, and you could access some of that money to make some of those moves that you want to put down on pre-construction and make that flip. And another thing with pre-construction, I'm just talking anecdotal stuff from my experience, is one property that I invested in, thought it was going to be done in 2 years. It's 5 years now, still not complete. Still not complete. So if I was waiting on that with my life, with my two children, and we're going to hotel to motel to motel for 5 years, and I didn't have no. So as you said, it all depends where you are and what you need, and you really have to do your research. And sometimes it's like flipping a coin because you never know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Nicole, what's your opinion on the flipping houses thing? Yay, nay?
Okay. So just starting off with what Jada just spoke about, buying your own property and then allowing it to gain its equity and then taking that out and then traveling to now an investment property. Now imagine if you had your own property and you also had as part of that own property an investment suite. So let's say the basement, for example, when I bought my first home, that basement was unfinished and just packed with boxes for until I sold. And that was a regret of mine. Imagine if I had finished that basement, just kind of put in that income to finish that basement and rented it out. That rent would have probably covered my mortgage payment, right? So if you can buy a property and then even if it doesn't come with the investment suite right away, if you add it, then that can now be generating money for you, right? So I think that would be my solid advice. If you get your own property to live in, also get part of that you can rent out and make money, and,
So
and you're
Nicole,
making that money while you sleep, right?
so
Now,
Nicole.
yep.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Okay, so I would definitely suggest that resale homes are definitely a great buy, right? But let's say you know what? I need a runway to save up this money that I'm going to be putting down on a property. So these developments, they're really aggressive now, though, right? They allow you to, on signing, put down some money, then 30 days, put down some more money, then 60 days, then 180 days. So if you needed that runway, right, to, come up with your down payment, then I think there's room, there's a case to be built for that. But I think the opportunity with resale is that you can get a property that generates income for you right away, right? And you can get a property that generates, has multiple suites, that's generating money for you on top and on bottom and on the side. You know what I mean? So that's where I sit. I'm actually with you on that one, Sheldon, for a change.
Hold on a sec. Hold on, Wiggs. I know you want to tap in. Hold on. So with that said, the difference is, and I believe this, and this is how I see it, with buying a resale, you have to be ready. You have to be packaged. Your credit has to be on point. You have to have all the money. You have to be ready to go. You have to be ready. The income has to be on point. Everything has to be ready to go to move into a resale. Pre-construction, as you mentioned, Nicole, it allows you that it gives you that time, right? And I think if you're trying to fix up your credit a little bit, maybe get a better job, maybe you're trying to figure things out. Pre-construction, I feel, is a great way to go. Especially, and I'm gonna tap back into SATMIT. SATMIT will work with you. All right, as far as as Nicole said, a lot of these developers now, these builders, it's aggressive. They want 120 grand in in 1 year, and you're like, yo, where am I getting that money, right? So some developers, there's some builders that they're a little less aggressive, and you may need a 40-45 over a year and a half. That sounds doable, but resale, you're gonna need that right away. You're gonna need that plus more right away, in order to get into the unit. So there's pros and cons with both, and yeah, you just got to figure out where you are.
All right. Now you
Agree.
you mentioned investment properties and things like that, right? Now, with all the new houses and new constructions that are being built, are you finding that there's a rise in people that are starting the process knowing that it's going to be an investment property, or is this something that has always been, happening in the backgrounds or in the forefront?
Oh, sorry. You can go ahead and take that one, Sheldon.
So sorry, I thought Nicole was going to jump to that one. So
Yeah, you want me to repeat it?
yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, like, with you guys mentioned investment properties and
Yeah.
things like that. Now I've noticed with a lot of the new construction, going east and north, there's a lot of people that are going into it knowing that it's going to be an investment property. Is this something that has been increasing more lately, or is this something that has always been trending?
Yeah, no, I think lately there's more awareness, right? As you know, every time we turn on the TV screen, right there, this especially with the way the way prices are moving in real estate. So real estate right now is as the younger generation would say, it's now trending, right? So I think more and more people are starting to realize, and more people are turning it or tuning in because they're thinking about it. They're saying, wait a minute, holy cow, like if I really want to get in the market, I really have to kind of go where where the opportunities are. So you're absolutely right. So as these developments pop up, even if we go back last year, right? So last year, you could even get last year or even before that, when the market sort of took off, developers, they except for the Andrea developer, but a lot of the developers, like the big guys, Green Park, they got really cocky, right? They didn't even want to work with realtors because they didn't need to, right? So people were like,
people are coming directly to them.
exactly. If you were anywhere in the GTA, whether it's Peel, whether it's Toronto, and you go, people were actually in lines, right, at these showrooms before they
Sheldon,
open.
you see the
right?
trailers with these model homes, and people are walking
Exactly.
in.
Exactly, and there was no deals. It's not like there was a deal happening, right? In fact, prices actually, went up. But like so more and more people are going, towards these new developments. And I think Gentleman and Nicole, like again, my mom, as my mom would always say, hit the nail on the head. In that, I think sometimes people, and I think it was a good way to define the groups. A lot of people who need more time, they'll go or move towards the pre-construction. And that's why I think that's what I was saying. It's it all depends on the situation, because you're right. Like, as I love it how gentlemen like break it down in that resale, you got to be packaged, you got to be ready, right? If you're not ready, then you're setting yourself up for disaster, because if you buy a home, you got to close in, it could be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, right? So if you don't have everything figured out, you're going to run into some serious issues. For example, if your credit is not good and you've already committed on a home, you can't fix it in 90 days. You can't even fix it in 12 months. So we have to make sure that we go back to the plan, right? So before you even think about making that purchase, you have to basically be saying to yourself, what does my credit look like, right? What does my credit look like? And first of all, if anyone is, the folks that are listening to us, if you're thinking about buying a place, the first thing you should be doing right now after this, go on Equifax.ca, pull your credit report. Literally, you need to pull your credit report.
Every day matters.
Every day matters. I mean, back in the days, I used to have my credit report behind my door. When I wake up in the mornings, I would look at my credit report, because what's happened to us too culturally is out of sight, out of mind. So we don't want to confront the credit report, because we know that there's it could be a student loan, it could be a car loan, it could be a Rogers bill or a FIDO bill. So we don't want to deal with it. But what I'm saying is, you need to pull your credit report, and don't pull. You know what? If you're serious, don't talk to me about the Credit Karma or the Burrell. I want you to go to Equifax.ca, pull the Equifax, pay the $23, pull the Equifax bureau, because you need to see what's on there. Because what you have to remember is the Burrell and the Credit Karma, those are not really your credit report. They're more of a consumer tool, right? So Equifax, so Burrell, I believe, is TransUnion, and Credit Karma is Equifax, or it could be vice versa. But what you really want to do is just go to Equifax.ca and pull your credit report. That's the first thing. So before you go and spend $25 or $10 at Starbucks, just say to yourself, I'm going to invest $25 in me, and pull that credit report. Print it off. Take a look at it, look at the score, but forget about the score for a second. Just look at the trade lines, because sometimes too, people have stuff on their credit report that shouldn't be there, right? Yeah. So you could have an item on your credit report that you don't even know you have, right? So first of all, you just want to make sure it's accurate, and make sure that everything that's there belongs to you. And if it's not, there's a process to get it removed, right? So that's the first recommendation. Pull your credit report. Be like me. Put it on your bedroom door. Every morning when you wake up, you want it to stare you in the face. You know what I mean? Because you can't run from it, right? So that's really important, right? We really need to know what our credit report looks like. A lot of
And
people.
just to touch on that, I know I've seen reports that now you have to be at about a 680 for CMHC. So you need to be at about, so try to get it at about a 680 or better. That's the goal.
Yeah,
The
look
score.
at those balances and start
But
knocking
when
them
it
off.
But I feel like when it comes to credit, a lot of us, when it comes to especially our community, a lot of us, like you said, to Sheldon, to pull your credit report, because a lot of us we have to remember that from we're younger, we are getting things. I don't know if y'all, but a lot of people, tend to get things in your name and utilize your social and things of that nature. So there probably is a lot of things that are on your credit that don't belong there, because somebody else used it to get something and didn't pay it off. And I also feel like sometimes when a lot of people want to purchase homes, but I feel like by looking at your credit report, I believe if you are under a 680 or even lower than that, I don't think somebody will want to put it at the back of their door to wake up to that. I think that would be a little bit depressing for somebody to look at, especially if your credit's not up there like that. And, like you guys said, credit is very important when you want to purchase a home. So my question to you guys is, what is your advice to people that want to purchase homes, but their credit is shot to hell, and they don't know what to do, and they're in panic mode because they do want to purchase a home, but as of right now, it's, it looks slim to none. So what would you guys suggest? What was something you guys would suggest? Is there a program you guys have is there any sort of programs that can help people like that to in that way, or are they on their own?
So I had mentioned earlier that I know we've come across this situation quite a bit as realtors, where people call us and they inquire about rent to own because their credit is crap, or they have down payment but their credit is not ready. It just needs work, right? So there's two ways of tackling this, or maybe even more. There's more than two ways. The thought of putting it on your door, even though it's depressing, still allows you to see the work that you need to do, perhaps, right? So if it's not totally overwhelming, like if you don't feel like it's impossible, then perhaps that gives you an opportunity to make a plan, right? To say, okay, I see you 565, but I raise you reducing that balance little by little. And maybe this means that your runway to buying a house is going to be a little bit longer, right? But at least you know that you won't be paying umpteen percentage to a B lender or a private lender to get a mortgage, right? So maybe tackling that head on and reducing your balance is one option. Another option, like I said, is practicing group economics. So perhaps you won't move into your own home right away, but you'll be involved in a real estate project where you own something, and whatever your rule is, maybe sell in 5 years and then you get your 30% or whatever you've organized. You'll gain some money, even though they didn't use your credit, you weren't on the mortgage, but you just offered down payment as your job, right? That's an option. And I think there's also companies that will help you to rebuild your credit. But that just means that, again, you're not going to be able to buy on your own right away. There will be a runway, right, for them to help you fix it and then get it into a shape where borrowers will lend you money on your own.
So the only thing I'll add there is I completely understand in regards to the credit situation, right? So, we don't want folks to feel like, if your credit score is below 680, it's just like game over. It's not game over, right? So it's not that you can't get a mortgage if your credit score is 530 or 540. It's not that at all. It just means your interest rate, your cost of borrowing is going to be higher, right? Because there's more risk to that lender that, things are not going to be smooth, right? And there's nothing wrong with, say go into, like a B lender or even a private lender, as long as you have a plan, right? The goal is you don't want to be with a B lender or a private lender for 20 years or 10 years, right? The goal of a private lender or a B lender is short term. So I'm okay with private lenders and B lenders as long as there's a plan to get you out of that bucket and into, a more reasonable interest rate later on. So for example, I love the story. So what if your credit score was 550, but the income was there, right? You can get a mortgage. That's perfectly fine. It's just that now your interest rate is not going to be 2% like what at TD or RBC or Scotia. It may be 3% and 4%. And some folks will say, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy." But really and truly, it's not, right? It's just a matter of managing the risk. So if I had the income to support a 4%, I would entertain a private lender or a B lender in order to get in the market, as long as I know that, hey, I'm going to now need a runway where in 12 months or 24 months, I'm out of this private lender or B lender, and I'm now at, a TD or BMO or Bank of Montreal or one of these banks. You see what I'm trying to say? So again, the idea is you need to figure out where you are. If you are in that, say, 550 or 590, it's not game over. You can still get a mortgage. You just have to now be ready to pay a higher interest rate. And as long as you have a plan now to say, you know what, I'm only going to live here for 12 months. When I say live here, in that lender's home, right? So as long as you know that I'm only going to be here now for 12 months or 24 months, and then you can now figure out, okay, what happens after 24 months? Now I can go to one of the big fives to apply for a mortgage that's much lower from an interest rate standpoint, right? And by then too, you would have had some equity to help you kind of, get there, right? So that's what I would recommend. So when I say put it on your wall, what I'm really saying is just pull it, look at it, right? And then figure out whether or not you're in a financial position in order to kind of move forward, right? Whatever that looks like. So, yeah.
All right. So let me switch it up a bit, right? And get your opinion or some reasoning. I've been shopping through different houses from from when my parents were doing it. I've been with my older siblings, gone with aunts and uncles, to myself. What I've noticed in general, and let me know if this is a fair assessment, on the real estate and development side, they don't build houses like they used to. Most of our parents and what we know, the house was built on the street with a with a big backyard and a front lawn, a driveway on the side street. But nowadays, a house looks like a cookie cutter thing, more long than thing. They tell you the bedrooms are small because nobody's in the bedroom, everything's in the basement. Da, 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 da. So, what caused that change? Is it a fair assessment? If you can comment on that.
So absolutely. So the major thing is about, um, it's capitalism.
Maximizing
Yeah,
space.
capitalism, right? So you want to maximize space. So right. So like 40 years ago, all right, things were different. It was about a bigger, like, providing space and so on. But now what you find is that you want to basically fit as much house as you can in a subdivision, right? So when Angie was talking about a planner and architect and all that stuff, right? That's the goal, right? So when any developer looks at a piece of land, right? They're looking at, okay, how many homes can I fit here, right? Based on the guidelines that the city is going to lay out, right? Because the city is going to have their own guidelines in regards to how much space is required and so on and so forth. But so Andrea is going to say, how many homes can I fit here? And the only way to do that is to go up, right? It's not to kind of go wide, right? You want to literally go upwards, right? In regards to that. So you're absolutely right. Things have changed.
Otherwise, you got to go to Sheldon.
Yes.
There you
Or
go.
further, because I'll tell you, my backyard is not that big. Even out here, my backyard is not that big. So yeah. But if you go even further out, you can find tiny little houses on huge lots. And I would say I would buy that any day. I love land space. And I think you can always renovate that house and put a bigger house on a larger lot, but you can't do anything with a smaller lot. You just got to live with it.
Yeah. All right, man. So I want to thank you all for coming out. There's this last piece. Speaking of Shelburne, so Nikki's husband told me when they were moving out there, yo, Jada, come on, Shel, yo, we are move, yo, move, move. So I'm like, yo, what, where's that? And he was just like, yo, so come, yo, I'm telling the man, yeah. So So they were ahead of their time, and each move that they moved, he was pivotal in trying to get guys to come up to join and hey, let's make a move. And I was just like, yo, I was kind of there, but not all the way there. Now I'm all the way there. All right, so I'm gonna let you all know. Don't watch the distance. Urban sprawl is happening. It's like unaffordable for an average person or average couple to purchase a home here and comfortably pay the mortgage. And I say comfortably, meaning you could go out to a dinner afterwards or go to a movie. You're done. Some people are working overtime just to pay the property tax. There's bills upon bills. When you home ownership, it's another beast. So you gotta really look into it. But I want to thank you all for tapping in, coming on. I want you to just as a signing out piece, let people know what you got going on and where and how they can find you.
You can take it from here, Sheldon.
Oh, well, I mean, you can go to andersonandchristian.com. We're, on the web. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. Yeah, we're cool. So we're everywhere. We're where people are. So yeah.
And the one thing I'd like to say is about Sheldon and I, if you're not ready to buy and you just have questions, you just want to know how something works, we are easy like Sunday morning. So you can call us, you can ask us any question you like, and trust that we are not going to be pressuring you to do something. We want you to love working with us and to be comfortable with us. So hit us up just to ask any questions, and then when you're ready to go, we're ready to go.
Wait, bang,